Welcome back to the Calm Living Blueprint. Of course, this is Candace here. We're into part 2 of module 2, opening up. In this module, we're going to troubleshoot expansion. Okay, so how did your week go? Did you practice expansion? Let me know how things went for you by leaving a comment below this video. I'm really interested in hearing about it. Now, if you've never done anything like expansion before, you may have found it difficult at first. To practice expansion may be simple, but I know it sure isn't easy. But then again, what meaningful challenge is? Raising kids, keeping fit, nurturing a relationship, developing a career, creating a work of art, caring for the environment. All these meaningful challenges involve some difficulty. So why should practicing expansion be any different, right? Like with any new skill, it's difficult to begin, but with practice, it does get easier. Now, there are some common pitfalls and questions that people run into when practicing expansion and acceptance techniques in general. So that's what we're going to cover in this video, how to overcome the top 5 pitfalls when it comes to expansion. And I'll also answer some of the most common questions that come up for clients. All right, so the first pitfall to be aware of is what I call the hidden agenda. The purpose of expansion is to make room for difficult feelings, to accommodate them, not to evict them. Okay, so if you're practicing expansion hoping it will get rid of fear or rid of anxiety, then you're still in avoidance mode, still trying to avoid or get rid of. And as we've already seen, that doesn't work. You can't reverse hundreds of millions of years of evolution that have primed you to feel fear when facing a challenge. So trying to get rid of your fear will only amplify it. Okay, so beware of the hidden agenda, which basically just means trying to avoid. Pitfall number 2 is the illusion of control. No, that should be a number 2 there. I'll have to change that. But this is pitfall number 2, the illusion of control. At times, you'll practice expansion and find that the fear and anxiety rapidly dissipates. When this happens, you'll feel a sense of relief or relaxation. At this point, it's easy to get hooked by the illusion that you found a clever way to control your feelings, a method of avoiding your anxiety. But if you start using expansion for that purpose, then clearly you're back into avoidance mode. So if your anxiety disappears or reduces, then by all means enjoy it, but please don't come to expect it. Okay, don't come to expect it. Regard it as a lucky bonus, kind of a cherry on the top. If you start to expect it, you'll soon be disappointed. So be aware of the illusion of control. Pitfall number 3 is called getting hooked. And it's easy for your mind to hook you with unhelpful stories. Old favorites like, I can't do it, or it's too hard, or I don't have time, or harsh judgments like, I hate this feeling, right? Or protests like, I just want to get rid of it. You can't keep those thoughts from showing up, so don't even try. Just let them come and go like passing cars. That's why we cover diffusion before expansion. If you're getting repeatedly hooked to such an extent that it interferes with expansion, then I recommend you go back to the module about diffusion, do a little bit more work on your diffusion skills, and get those better while after coming back to expansion to further your skills of expansion. Okay, so pitfall number 4 is tolerance. Sometimes people think expansion is about tolerating their anxiety, grinning and bearing it, putting up with it, or even resigning themselves to it. This is way off the mark. In expansion, we aim to allow our fear. And that doesn't mean we like it, want it, or approve of it. It simply means we give it space and allow it to do its own thing. So to clarify this, imagine that you have an avoidance dial at the back of your mind. An avoidance dial. And this dial goes from 0 to 10. When it's on 10, you're in total avoidance mode. You'll do whatever you possibly can to avoid or get rid of this feeling. When it's on 0, you don't like it or want this feeling, but you invest absolutely no effort whatsoever in trying to get rid of it. So when the dial is at 0, we call this acceptance. When the dial is set around 5, we call it tolerance. Tolerance means you're moving in the direction of acceptance, but you're not quite there yet. If you sense that you're tolerating rather than accepting, that's okay. It's a good start. Just recognize there's more practice to be done. The experience of fully accepting a feeling, totally dropping the struggle with it, is very different from putting up with it or tolerating it. So be clear about tolerance versus acceptance. And pitfall number 5 is forgetting the point. We can easily forget the point of expansion, which is to make room for difficult feelings in order to live by our values. If we want to live rich and full lives guided by our values, then we'll have to leave our comfort zones repeatedly. And each time we leave our comfort zone, we're going to feel fear. Expansion enables us to feel that fear without a struggle, so that we can invest our energy in acting on our values. So please don't forget the point of expansion, which is to allow you to do the things that you want to do and to be the person that you want to be, even when anxiety or fear come up. Okay, so those are the most common pitfalls, and let me answer now some of the most common questions that come up for clients, since I'm sure some of these have probably come up for you too. And just so you know, these are actual questions, pretty much word for word, that I have been asked by clients in the past at one time or another. So the first question is, I tried to make room for the feeling, but it was too overwhelming. What should I do? And my answer to that is to just pick one troublesome sensation and keep your focus on it. Aim to accept just that one sensation, even if it takes you several minutes. Then once you've done that, go ahead and pick another one. Okay, so if you're finding it too overwhelming, just focus on one sensation. The next question is, it's hard to stay focused on one sensation. What should I do? Yes, absolutely. Sometimes it is hard at first, but I assure you it gets easier with practice. Give it your best shot, and if your attention wanders to another sensation, then as soon as you realize it, bring it back again. Just gently bring your focus back again. You're going to get through this with practice. The next question is, but my thoughts keep distracting me. What do I do? Yeah, so this is the basic nature of our minds. Our minds distract us again and again, pulling you out of your experience. So when your mind starts chattering, just say, thanks mind, or silently say to yourself, thinking. Then gently return your attention to the sensation. So use those diffusion techniques that we went through in the previous module. Each time you do this, you are learning 2 valuable skills. First, to notice when you're all caught up in your thoughts, which is fusion, if you remember. And second, to refocus your attention after it has wandered. And again, that's a skill that will get easier for you with practice. The next question is, that was fantastic. The moment I made room for my unpleasant feelings, they disappeared. Is this what I can expect every time? When we practice expansion, unpleasant feelings often disperse rapidly. But as with diffusion techniques, this is merely a bonus, not the main intention. The aim with expansion is simply to make room for your feelings, to feel whatever you are feeling without a struggle. Often those feelings will move more rapidly or dissipate more rapidly, but sometimes they won't. So if you're expecting, to quote unquote feel good, then sooner or later you'll get disappointed and end up struggling again. Okay, so just be aware of that. The next question is, the feelings disappeared at first, but then they came back again. What do I do? So many uncomfortable feelings will surface repeatedly. If someone you love has died, for example, then waves of sadness may keep washing over you for many weeks or months. And if you've been diagnosed with a serious illness, waves of fear will surge up again and again. As the saying goes, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. So use the skills you're learning about expansion to be able to surf those waves. And it's natural for uncomfortable feelings to resurface repeatedly. The next question. I made room for my feelings, but they didn't change. What do I do? Well, sometimes feelings change quickly and sometimes they don't. You don't need to accept that they will change. Let me say that a different way. You need to accept that they will change in their own good time, not according to your schedule. Okay, so this question, it's really about trusting the process, placing trust in the process. Accept that they're going to change in their own good time, not necessarily according to your schedule, and that's okay. Next question. Okay, I've accepted my feelings, now what? So I get asked that a lot. And having accepted your emotions, choose an area of your life that is important to you and take effective action in line with your values. What I mean by that is going to become a lot more clear. We're going to cover this in a lot more detail in a later module, so stay tuned for that. Next question, why do you keep coming back to actions and values? Well, actions are important because unlike your thoughts and feelings, you have a lot of control over them. Values are important because they can guide you and motivate you through situations where your feelings might lead you off course. Acting in accordance with your own deepest values is inherently satisfying and fulfilling, even though it often forces you to face your fears. So pleasant feelings like satisfaction, joy, and love are natural byproducts of living by your values. But they aren't the only ones. Other byproducts include uncomfortable emotions like fear, sadness, anger, frustration, and disappointment. You can't have just the pleasant feelings without all the others. That's why it's important to learn how to accept all your feelings, pleasant, neutral, and unpleasant. Next question. Lots of self-help approaches suggest that when we are feeling bad, we should try things like taking a hot bath, listening to music, reading a good book, savoring a hot chocolate, getting a massage, walking the dog, and so on. Are you suggesting we shouldn't try these kinds of activities? Okay, so I'm sure you've had plenty of great advice from all sorts of sources about helpful activities to try when you're feeling quote unquote bad. Okay, when you're feeling bad. And most of these activities can be deeply satisfying as long as you genuinely value them. So that is, as long as you engage in them out of a sense that they are truly meaningful to you. But if you do these activities mainly to run away from unpleasant feelings, they aren't likely to be all that rewarding. It's hard to appreciate life when you're trying to avoid something threatening. That's why in the Calm Living Blueprint, acceptance always comes first. First, you make room for your feelings and allow them to be exactly as they are. Then you ask, what can I do right now that is truly meaningful or important? What can I do that is truly meaningful or important? This is very different from asking, how can I feel better? All right, so what can I do right now that is truly meaningful or important versus how can I feel better? Then once you've identified an activity you truly value, go ahead and take action. The main goal is to engage in meaningful activities no matter how you feel. It's that in the long run that makes life fulfilling. Next question. I did accept my feelings for a little while, but then I started struggling with them again. What should I do? So this is common. We often need to accept, and accept again. The word acceptance is misleading in a sense because it seems like a one-time action. In fact, acceptance is an ongoing process. A better word might be accepting. Okay, so you'll need to accept again, and accept again. And again, that's okay. That's natural. Next question. What do I do if strong feelings come on when I'm at work or in some other situation, or I just can't sit down and practice expansion? Well, uh, with practice, expansion can almost happen instantly. So eventually you'll get to the point where you'll be able to create expansion instantly. It takes only a couple of seconds to take a slow, deep breath, scan your body, and make some room for what you're feeling. Once you've done that, focus your attention on effective action rather than getting caught up in your feelings. So over time, you're going to get so good at expansion that it'll become instantaneous for you and you won't have to worry about this. Is slow, deep breathing essential? No, it's not, but most people find it is helpful. The other two steps, noticing and allowing, are the only essential aspects of expansion. But in my experience, and in the experience of a lot of my clients, slow, deep breathing can definitely help. How can I accept my feelings when they have embarrassing side effects, like making me blush? Well, part of my training to become a doctor involved practicing drawing blood and giving IVs, okay, intravenous therapy. It kind of made me feel like a sadist. I didn't want to hurt anyone with a needle, so often I felt quite anxious, and as a result, my hands would shake. Obviously, this was very embarrassing, but if I got upset about it, they just shook more and prevented me from doing the job I had to do. I didn't like my shaking hands, but I realized I couldn't control them. It's just what my hands do when I get really nervous. So in these situations, the only sensible option was acceptance. I would say to my colleague, the person that I was practicing on, to draw the blood or to insert the IV. I'd say to them, you may see my hand shaking a bit. You don't need to worry. It always happens, but it doesn't stop me from doing a good job. Then, as I started to prepare to insert the needle, my hands became steady. And with practice, I got better at it. In fact, most of the time, people didn't even feel the needle go in. Our bodies do all sorts of awkward things when we have strong feelings. We may start to blush, twitch, shake, sweat, have stomach cramps, lose an erection, fail to reach an orgasm, or even faint or vomit, right? A whole host of possible things can happen. Keep in mind that these reactions are often a result of the struggle switch. Remember the struggle switch? It's a result of the struggle switch being on. With the struggle switch on, emotions are amplified, right? We get anxious about being anxious. And therefore, the physical sensations, the physical reactions in our body become greater. With the struggle switch off, our emotions are smaller and change more rapidly, thereby causing less intense physical reactions. So you're much better off if you accept these reactions than if you struggle with them. If you struggle, your feelings will intensify and your bodily reactions will worsen. However, often when we accept these reactions, they improve, like the example I gave with my shaky hands. Next question. I'm starting to have doubts about you. You sound like you're anxious too. So not really a question, more of a statement. I did have one client tell me this, and it's a fair statement. Well, I don't go around pretending to be an enlightened being or claim to have it all together. I freely admit that I'm human and I fall into the same traps as everyone else. So yes, you're absolutely right. I do experience a fair amount of anxiety in my life. However, these days I generally handle it pretty well. For example, when I'm speaking in public or about to record a podcast episode, for example, I fully accept my anxiety without a struggle. Just before I start speaking, my anxiety skyrockets. Then, as I become increasingly involved in my talk or my podcast, one of two things happens. Either it goes down or it doesn't. Usually it goes down fairly quickly, but even if it doesn't, it's not a problem because now I fully accept it. Of course, there are times when I still handle my anxiety poorly, when I completely forget everything that I've created and I'm teaching in the Calm Living Blueprint. I'll pace up and down my house worrying uselessly or, wolf down an entire bag of chips. But as the years go by, I do such things less and less frequently, a lot less frequently, and I get better and better at catching myself and doing something more effective instead. Right? The same will undoubtedly be true for you. You'll use these new skills at times and reap the rewards, and at other times you'll forget about them. That's okay. Again and again throughout your life, you'll get caught up in a struggle with your feelings. That's the bad news. The good news is, the very moment you realize this has happened, you can instantly respond far more effectively. You can instantly turn things around. So there's no such thing as failure. Next question. I don't really like all this acceptance stuff. Surely there must be an easier way of dealing with emotions, right? And forgive my spelling of dealing. So you need to trust your own experience on this. The Calm Living Blueprint works particularly well with clients who have tried many different types of therapy or personal development programs. That's because these people have experienced for themselves that control strategies are not effective in the long run. So you may need to go and try some of the more popular approaches, hypnosis, visualization, affirmations, positive thinking, and so on, and discover for yourself that they really are not effective in the long term. Just experience that for yourself. Perhaps only then will you be fully ready to take on this approach. Consider all the ways you've tried to control negative thoughts and feelings, and ask yourself, did those methods work in the long term for you? And did they bring you closer to the life you want? Right? Do these principles apply to all emotions? Yes, they do, but most of us have no problem with neutral or pleasant emotions, right? We only tend to struggle with the uncomfortable ones, like anxiety and fear, and so that's why in the Calm Living Blueprint, we're focusing on anxiety and fear. I don't feel any emotions in my body. They're all in my head. What do I do? Well, sometimes it seems as though you don't feel emotions in your body, but everybody does. I assure you, everybody does. If you can't readily feel them, it suggests you may be a bit disconnected from your body. It's not a judgment statement on my part. It's, I'm simply stating what may be the reason for this happening. So if this is the case, you'll want to pay special attention to the lessons that we cover in the next module, which is about being in the here and now and connecting with the present, and in turn, connecting with what's happening inside your body. And lastly, but I don't feel anything when I'm deeply upset. I just go numb. Well, I would say then, practice accepting your numbness. Practice accepting your numbness. Find the part of your body that feels the most numb and practice expansion around that. You'll usually find that as you make room for that numbness, other uncomfortable feelings will arise. Then you can practice expansion around those. Okay, so we covered a lot of questions there. I hope your questions were among them. If not, feel free to contact me and, I'll help you sort things out. All right, so far you've learned how to accept fear and anxiety, through noticing it, acknowledging it, and making space for it and expanding your awareness. And you've learned about the most common pitfalls and how to overcome them. Next, you're going to discover how to use your anxiety and fear, how to turn it to your advantage. So this is going to be kind of boosting all the techniques that you learned about so far when it comes to acceptance. So I'll see you in the next lesson.